board, and then I'll mute myself and you just identify however you want, and we'll get rolling.
So we're ready to go then, huh? Okay. My name is Mel, and I'm a recovering alcoholic. You know, sober today, not because of me, but in spite of me. And, my journey I took my last drink on October 29th, 1986. And I stumbled into Alcoholics Anonymous meeting on October 30th, 1986. And I haven't had a drink since. And like, I want, folks to know that that isn't because of me. It's certainly in spite of me. And, we're taught in the program to talk about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And, what it was like is, when I did my first on purpose drunk when I was 15 years old with money from my paper route. And I got 24 cans of, I had some older guys buy me some country club malt liquor. They don't even make that stuff anymore. And I got a case of it, and they took me out in the desert where we lived in, so I could hide it behind the sagebrush and then come back later. And that's what I did with two buddies. And there were three of us, and so 24. I drank 12. You do the math. Should have known right away that there might be an issue, right? And when I woke up after that, I had thrown up all over myself, was tipped over forward. I was sitting like an Indian, and of course I can't do that anymore because that was a long time ago, but sick, headache, but I couldn't wait to do that again. Couldn't wait to do that again. And so I did that, and when I was a kid, and I did it whenever I could, and whenever I could, it kind of was weekends. And as I got older, that whenever I could was every day. And throughout all of that, I was having lots of fun, I guess. I mean, people tell me I was having fun. I had a young woman say, let's go hang out. Went to a football game, and I've been married now to her for 45 years, and why has nothing to do with me. But if you ask her why, she said, looked like I was having fun. And we lived together for a couple of years, and then we got married, and we had 3 children. And for 7, I made her life hell for 7 years. For 7 years, I made her life hell. And then this is all, drinking caused me problems with my employment. I was always able to stay employed because I understood how important it was to, that paycheck was in relation to obtaining that booze, right? And my story includes, I used every drug that was out there, but it just never was my thing. I didn't. And so, it was booze. And it got to the point where, I was drinking alone because no one wanted to be around me because it got that bad. And that was it was a lonely existence, and I knew that I needed to quit and or do something different for sure. And so I would come to in the mornings, because that's what it got to. It wasn't waking up, it was coming to. And I would look at that person in the mirror and say, you did it again, you son of a bitch. You did it again. And I'm not going to do this anymore. And then, be drunk by noon again. Right. And throughout my recovery, we hear folks all the time say I was a functioning alcoholic. Well, I was I was drinking going to work and, you know, doing the best I could. Um, and so if you call that functioning, that's what I was doing. But I was, you know, dying inside, and I did that quit thing, look in the mirror and quit thing. I don't know, hundreds of times, easy hundreds of times, maybe more than, you know, and you know what was different. What was different that last time was, um, you know, it was like I picked up a phone and I called a friend who had been sober 18 months, who had almost drank himself to death and had gone to a treatment center and then had, you know, he's got a year and a half sobriety. And this is what my ego said. This is how my ego was. I said, Joey, I don't want to be the way I am anymore, but I'm not as bad as you were, you know, and you know, who says that, right? Well, a sick, messed up drunk. And and you know, he'd been around long enough to know, and he said, just don't drink anything all day today. And then come to that meeting tonight at 8 o'clock, because you know where it's at. And that's still to this day the longest day of my life. Don't know how I made it all day without taking a drink. Can't tell you right now. I know that I got in, I went and took a nap, and then I didn't take a nap, and then I, you know, took a shower, and then I didn't take a shower, and I took another nap, and then I sat on my hands, and then I ate some donuts. For whatever reason, I had a box of donuts. And I did stupid shit, but you know what, I just didn't. I made it to that meeting that night, and I was shaken and sick and alone and just filled with self-loathing, and I walked up those stairs to that meeting because that's what that guy told me to do. And I know now that I didn't get up those stairs by myself. I didn't make that decision by myself. I didn't take those actions, you know, get that idea in my head. I had some help. And I, you know, that was a higher power that I didn't even know was helping me, right? I didn't even know that was helping me. And I sort of had a concept of a higher power, you know, when I, prior to all that, just by the way I was raised. But you know, I wasn't grateful for that higher power. That night I just got up there and I was, you know, sat down, and you know, it was a speaker meeting. There was probably 35, 40 people in the room. They had a podium, and they encouraged everyone to get up and go to the podium and speak. And you didn't have to if you didn't want to. And, you know, they went around the room and they called on people, and pretty soon they called on me. And you know, I didn't get up and go to that podium. I was scared, right? And I just said, my name is Mel and I'm an alcoholic, and the tears just started running down my face. And, you know, I don't, to this day, it's, you know, that reaction is important for me to remember because, you know, I wasn't, anyway, you know, there was an old man sitting next to me right after I said that, and he put his hand on my leg, and I thought, you know, let's not get weird here. But, you know, he put his hand on my leg and he said, son, he said, you never have to feel the way you feel right now ever again if you don't want to. And of course, you know, in my mental state, you know, you know, I suspected him of, you know, his motives, and, you know, these people were crazy. It was a birthday night, and they were getting up in front of the room, and they were celebrating annual increments of sobriety, and they were, you know, in terms of 25 and 30 years of sobriety. And I thought, these people are out of their fucking mind. There's who stays sober, who does that? And then and those people, and you know, after the meeting, that old timer and another old timer, you know, they said, come on, let's go have coffee. Well, you know, I don't know about you when you first sobered up, but pie and coffee, they said pie and coffee. I didn't want any freaking pie or your coffee. I didn't, you know, it was nighttime. You don't drink coffee at night. And I went with these guys to a coffee shop, and, you know, they just talked about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. They just shared their story kind of like I'm doing now. And I thought it rather weird that these guys would be that forthcoming and intimate with somebody they hardly even knew. And they said, you know, I was in my own truck, and so, you know, we got out in the parking lot and they said, we'll see you there tomorrow, huh? And I wasn't counting on doing that. And I said, oh, you know, we'll see. And they said, no, no, the kind of son of a bitch you are, you need to be there tomorrow. That's exactly what that man said to me. And I thought, well, okay. And he said, don't drink between now and then. And if you think you're going to call me first. And I said, okay. I said, okay. And so I did that. And another long day, but not as long as the first day. And that's how it began. And I just, and those guys kept saying, come back, keep coming back, and don't drink between meetings. And that was all I was capable of doing, you know, in those meetings. You know, they read things in those meetings, and you know, one of them is how it works. And the first time they handed that to me, I couldn't even focus and read it. I couldn't read it when I first got to, that's how jacked up I was. You know, I still maintained that job that I had, and you know, I was on the third step of a 3-step process, and you know, which means if you understand 3-step processes in big industry, I was on my way out the door. And you know, I went to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I kept doing that and kept going to those meetings. And you know, one of the saving graces was his business was good at that place, and so you could work all the overtime you wanted to, and so I did. And that helped me, I guess, not feel sorry for myself, or like, you know, excuse me, you know, concentrate on, put my head somewhere else besides feeling sorry for myself. And you know, it just went day in, day out like that, day in, day out, day in, day out. And you know, when I came to that place with no hope and loneliness such as, you know, I was, loneliness such as few knew, like it said in the book, it says in the book, incomprehensible demoralization and you know, self-loathing. And you know, after a few days, and I'm going to say a few days, maybe a couple, 3 weeks or something, I started to see a crack of hope. And it was, you know, 6 weeks or something like that. And the people I worked with says, what the hell happened to you? When the hell happened to you? You're showing up early, you're staying late, you know, you stay out there and work the whole shift. You ain't in here bullshitting with us. You know, what's up? And I didn't answer them. I just, you know, and you know, I found out about 6 weeks into sobriety that that wife that I was talking about and those 3 little kids, they had, she had found a place to live, and she was headed out. And you know, it was you know, and she said that she, you know, was ready. She had boxes packed. She was going, and she couldn't stand to watch me do what I was doing to myself. And she was, you know, she's going to love me, but she was going to love me from across town because she couldn't stand to watch that anymore. You know, by the grace of that same higher power, she hung around. And you know what the fuck's wrong with her? And well, nothing. She's just, you know, that same woman's, you know, she's the one that taught me how to to love and to be loved. You know, taught me how, taught me that it was okay to, you know, not be on top of your game all the time. Um, and she, you know, they said some of those folks at the meeting, you know, they got a hold of her and they said, well, you need to come to this Al-Anon thing. And she said, well, you know, I'm not the drunk, but I'll come see what it is you folks want me to do. And she went to one Al-Anon meeting and says, I ain't doing that shit. She says, those ladies are crazy. And I said, well, it's up to you. And what she did do is they had open meetings on Saturday nights for the families of members. And she came on Saturday nights, and she came every Saturday night for, and the first times we walked out of there across the street to go to the car, she says, I got no problems. Those people got problems. And she says, it's inspiring to listen to them, you know, the different stages of solving that problem. Right. And she says, you know, I just feel better. And so the reason she goes, and since we moved down to Arizona, she doesn't go on Saturday nights because we haven't found that same kind of deal. But she goes with me to meetings that are open, and that's where she gets her deal. it's I was, like I told you before, I was on a three-step process and headed out the door at that place. And, Alcoholics Anonymous gave me a life I didn't imagine possible. I went through the book with one of those two old guys, the guy that put his hand on my leg, and we went through the book, and to the best of my ability, I did what was suggested in that first 164 pages of that book. And, went to work and did what I was supposed to do, and was a participant in life rather than, the drunk guy, and, drunk making everybody's life impossible. And that job turned into, found out that I had ability and talent and that kind of thing, that, I was all that drinking and stuff, I guess, covered up, or I didn't care about, or however you want to advertise it. I worked at that place for 35 years, and I retired about 6 years ago, 8 years ago. It's been 8 years now. And like I said, I was headed out the door, and I retired as operations manager, right? That, just kept getting opportunity after opportunity. And those opportunities have damn little to do with me, and more to do with, the program that's taught me that there's a way to live a principle-centered life. And you know, I was a liar, thief, and a cheat when I first, way back then. Couldn't tell the truth. Steal your wallet if you laid it on the table, that kind of thing. And it's just, I say it all the time, and if, that higher power thing, it developed over time to what it is today. And, my higher power is, I choose to call him God. He's the higher power, similar to the one that I knew when I was growing up, and, taught by my parents and grandparents and that kind of thing. But he's a higher power today that, I can just, I turn it all over to him in the morning, and I do my best to let him do it all day. And, I ask for his help in the morning to not drink. And I say thanks at night. And in Alcoholics Anonymous, it doesn't run itself. And so they have what they call trusted servants. Another word to say it is trusted suckers, because, they have elections, and that same old man that put his hand on my leg all those years before, I was probably sober about 8 or 9 years, and he said, when are you going to stop paying lip service to your gratitude? And I said, what the hell do you mean? He says, every time we need these trusted servants, you're nowhere to be found. He says, I think you ought to show up to the next meeting. And I thought, well, I thought, you ignorant son of a bitch, don't I do enough? And the truth, no, I wasn't doing enough. And so I showed up. And, if you show up in a deal like that, you can already know that you're going to end up with a service position. And I did. And that, started the next 22 years of having a service position all the time. And, it's in Alcoholics Anonymous, when you get a service position, you move down in importance. The most important person in the room is the newest person in the room. And everybody after that is less important. And if you're in service, you become the least important person in the group. And I learned, in that process, I ended up as the Area 76 chairperson, which is the state of Wyoming. I was in service to those people, honest to God, in service to those people. And that's how I operated. This ain't about me. I didn't vote. I didn't vote on purpose because I didn't want to, sway. I didn't, that's not what I was there for. But I I learned to be in service to people. And since I've moved down here, like I said, it was 8 years ago, I've learned that, you know, um, the best place for me now is my back against the wall and my mouth shut, which is hard for me. I like to, share my opinions and that sort of thing. But the best place in Alcoholics Anonymous, in regards to my sobriety, is my back against the wall. And when asked, answer. And most of the time with my mouth shut and my ears open and in a position to learn and grow and get better. And it may sound weird after all these years, but I firmly believe I'm better off. All the opportunities that I get to sit with a group of drunks who are doing the same thing I'm doing back, and one more day away from the hell they've come from, excuse me. And I'm doing the same thing they're doing, and I can learn from them even after all these years. And so I'm grateful to that higher power that I just talked about. I'm grateful to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm mostly grateful to all the people that are back and one more day away from that hell they came from, are recovering from this horrible, awful disease. Because if you look at it statistically, mathematically, we are the exception. This is a gift, a God-given gift. And I treat it as such. And so I got an opportunity, to share my experience, strength, and hope. And I'm better for that. My wish is that you are. But honestly, if you are, you are. If you aren't, you aren't. But I damn sure am. And I'm a better person after, having spent this few minutes with you guys. So thank you so much for the opportunity. Thanks.
Let's see.